The scream tore her through the silent apartment, raw and unrestrained, making Sarah clutch her son Ethan tighter against her chest as the door quivered in its frame. Mark's face twisted with fury, his words slashing like knives as he spat blame she could no longer carry. Sarah whispered, "Please, stop this before he hears more," but Mark slammed the door with a crash so violent it rattled the windows and shook the floor beneath her feet. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, mingling with the rapid beating of Sarah's heart, the sound a warning of storms already gathering. Ethan buried his face into her shoulder, his small voice trembling. "Mommy, are we safe?" Her throat closed, yet she forced the words, "I'll keep you safe, always," though fear curled inside her, heavy and sharp. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and broken trust, clinging like a suffocating cloak. Sarah's mind raced with fragments of every sacrifice, every night she fought the world alone, only to face this betrayal. She thought, "How much more can I bear before I shatter completely?" The echo of Mark's footsteps fading down the hallway pressed the final truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. Sarah paced the apartment floor, every creak reminding her of promises broken. Ethan sat on the couch, his eyes red from tears yet fixed on her with trust she feared she couldn't live up to. She whispered, "We'll get through this, Ethan, I swear," though her voice cracked with unspoken doubt. Mark's rage lingered like a shadow, filling the silence he left behind. The smell of stale coffee and broken wood clung to the air, reminders of a life slipping further away. Ethan asked softly, "Is he coming back?" Sarah swallowed hard, masking her fear with forced steadiness. "Not tonight. Not ever like that again." Each word felt like stitching a wound with trembling hands. She stared at the locked door, her reflection in the glass fractured, reminding her of all the times she stood alone. Still, she held Ethan's small hand, thinking if I fall, he falls too, and that could never happen. Sleep refused to come, so Sarah sat by the window, Ethan asleep under a blanket nearby, his soft breathing the only sound steadying her. Outside, police sirens faded into the night, leaving an eerie stillness. She thought about the years she fought for stability, only to have it collapse in one brutal night. "How much more can I endure?" she whispered, her hand pressed against the cold glass. The moon hung low, its light washing her face pale, like a mirror to her exhaustion. Ethan stirred in his sleep, murmuring her name, reminding her why she couldn't break. She whispered into the quiet, "For you I'll keep going," her chest rising with shaky resolve. Fear clawed at her still, but love pressed back harder, a fragile balance she clung to with both hands. Morning light broke through thin curtains, yet peace felt like an intruder Sarah could not trust. She brewed coffee with trembling hands, its bitter scent filling the small kitchen. Ethan padded in, sleepy-eyed, clutching his stuffed bear. "Are you okay, Mommy?" he asked, his voice carrying both innocence and worry. Sarah forced a smile, answering, "I'm okay because you're here," though her body sagged with exhaustion. She glanced at the door, wood cracked from Mark's rage, a scar that refused to fade overnight. Ethan sat at the table, swinging his legs, his presence the fragile anchor keeping her from drifting. Sarah thought of bills, her job, and the custody fight she knew would come, each thought pressing like stones on her chest. Still, she handed Ethan breakfast, whispering silently to herself, "I'll fight for him until my last breath." The day stretched heavy as Sarah dressed Ethan for school, her hands moving through routine, though her mind spun in chaos. Ethan clutched her hand tighter than usual, sensing the unspoken storm. Outside, the street was quiet, sunlight bright yet unforgiving, making her squint as though it exposed all her secrets. She knelt and looked into his eyes, whispering, "You're my strength, Ethan. Never forget that." His nod was small, but his grip firm. As they walked, Sarah's chest tightened, each step a reminder that their life had shifted forever. She thought of Mark's fury, the custody battle looming, and the friend she feared might betray her. Still, with Ethan's small hand locked in hers, she knew surrender was not an option. The world might strip her bare, but love would be her armor. The morning felt heavier than the night before, as Sarah walked Ethan to school, her hand squeezing his a little too tight. Ethan looked up, sensing her unease, and whispered, "Will it be okay?" She forced a small smile, answering, "It has to be." The playground buzzed with children, their laughter sharp against Sarah's fragile mood. She kissed Ethan's forehead, telling him to be brave, while her heart cracked quietly beneath the surface. Watching him run off, she felt exposed, the world watching her every step. A parent whispered to another, their eyes darting her way, rumors already swirling. Her chest tightened, the fear of judgment pressing like weights. Sarah turned and walked quickly, whispering under her breath, "I won't let them see me break." Each step back home was a battle to keep her head held high, though inside she felt like she was collapsing piece by piece. At work, Sarah sat at her desk, papers stacked high, computer screen glowing with tasks she couldn't focus on. Her coworker Lisa leaned over, whispering, "Are you okay? You look exhausted." Sarah nodded, replying, "Just a rough night." The truth hung unspoken, too raw to reveal. The office hummed with phones ringing, keyboards clattering, yet Sarah felt like an island sinking beneath the noise. She thought of Mark, of custody threats, and of Ethan's wide, frightened eyes. Her chest ached with the weight of holding everything together. Lisa touched her shoulder, whispering, "You don't have to do this alone." Sarah forced a smile, masking the panic within. She whispered back, "I'll manage," though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. The day dragged, each second stretching, the fight between her crumbling heart and the mask she wore growing harder to win. When Sarah picked Ethan up from school, he clung to her hand tighter than usual, his small face pale. "Some kids said things about Dad," he whispered, eyes filling with tears. Sarah's heart clenched and she bent low, saying, "People talk, but it doesn't mean they know the truth." His lip trembled and he asked, "Why are they so mean?" She held him close, whispering, "Because they don't understand us, Ethan. But we're stronger than their words." The walk home was long, every step heavy with the knowledge that her battles now bled into his fragile world. She hated that he carried burdens far too heavy for his age. Sarah thought, "I must protect him, even if it costs me everything." The sky darkened, clouds rolling in, as though the world mirrored her storm inside. That night, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out before her, numbers blurring through tears. Ethan slept in his room, his soft breathing carrying into the silence. Sarah whispered to herself, "How do I make this work?" Every overdue notice was a wound reminding her of battles waiting at the door. She rubbed her temples, exhaustion weighing down when the phone buzzed. A message from Mark, "You'll never win this fight." Her stomach twisted, anger mixing with fear. She whispered aloud, "You don't get to decide that anymore." Yet the uncertainty cut deep, a shadow she couldn't escape. The clock ticked louder, mocking her sleepless nights. She closed her eyes, imagining Ethan's face, and clung to that fragile thread of hope, whispering, "For him, I will fight until there's nothing left." The weekend arrived with no relief. Sarah visited her friend Lisa, desperate for warmth and advice. Lisa poured coffee, saying softly, "You can't carry this alone forever." Sarah stared into the cup, whispering, "If I fall apart, Ethan falls too." Lisa leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "That's why you need support. Let me help." Sarah's throat tightened, unused to leaning on anyone. She looked up and whispered, "I don't even know how." Lisa smiled gently, answering, "You start by letting someone in." The words sank deep, stirring both fear and relief. For the first time, Sarah felt the fragile possibility of not being entirely alone. Yet in her heart she knew trust came with risk, and risk had broken her before. "Still," she whispered, "maybe I'll try," as though the words themselves might shatter if spoken louder. The phone rang late in the evening, shattering the fragile quiet of Sarah's apartment. She answered hesitantly, hearing Mark's voice sneer, "You'll never keep him from me." Her chest tightened, the venom in his words pressing deep. Ethan stirred in the other room, murmuring her name in his sleep, unaware of the storm raging on the line. Sarah said firmly, "This isn't about you, it's about his safety." Mark laughed, cold and sharp, before ending the call with silence heavier than threats. Sarah's hands trembled, her heart pounding like a drum against ribs that felt too weak to hold her up. She whispered, "He won't take you from me," as though Ethan could hear through his dreams. The weight of betrayal and the looming custody battle spread like cracks in glass, threatening to shatter what little peace remained. The next day, Sarah met Lisa at a cafe, her voice breaking as she explained Mark's late-night call. "He's trying to scare me," Sarah whispered, her hands clutching the coffee mug. Lisa's eyes hardened as she replied, "Then you fight back with truth and proof." Sarah stared down, the steam fogging her vision, whispering, "But what if I'm not strong enough?" Lisa leaned closer, voice steady. "You are, Sarah. You always have been. You just don't see it." Around them, the cafe buzzed with laughter and clinking cups, yet Sarah felt miles apart, trapped in a battle only she could fight. Still, Lisa's presence was a small anchor, a reminder that she wasn't completely alone, even when darkness pressed too close. Later that week, Sarah found an envelope taped to her door, her name scrawled in Mark's harsh handwriting. Inside, court papers announced his fight for custody. Her breath caught, chest tightening as the words blurred. Ethan peeked from behind her, asking, "What is it, Mom?" Sarah folded the paper quickly, whispering, "Nothing you need to worry about." His eyes narrowed with childlike suspicion, sensing truths too heavy for his age. Sarah shut the door, leaning against it, her body trembling as she whispered, "I won't let him win." The walls seemed to close in, memories of every sacrifice pressing like ghosts. She imagined the courtroom, imagined his lies, and her voice faltered as she repeated the promise again. "I won't let him take you." At night, Sarah dreamed of the past, memories of her mother's voice echoing, "You're stronger than you think." She saw herself as a little girl, standing in the same apartment years ago, her mother's hand brushing tears from her cheek. Waking with a jolt, she whispered into the dark, "I can't let history repeat." Ethan stirred beside her, rolling closer in his sleep, his small body seeking warmth. She brushed his hair softly, whispering, "I'll protect you no matter what." Her heart pounded with fear and resolve, a fragile balance she knew she must carry into the days ahead. Every scar from the past burned fresh, urging her to stand, to fight, to rise. The weekend brought no peace. Sarah met with a lawyer, Mr. Collins, who studied the custody papers with a furrowed brow. "He's going to push every weakness he can," he said. Sarah's voice cracked as she whispered, "What if that's enough?" Mr. Collins leaned forward, replying, "Not if you stand firm and tell your truth." His words carried authority, but the doubt in her chest roared louder. Ethan waited in the hall, legs swinging, unaware of the war being mapped inside. Sarah clenched her fists under the table, whispering, "For him, I'll fight." Her fear didn't vanish, but the resolve planted roots, fragile yet real. For the first time, she felt the shape of her defense forming, a path forward through the storm. Sarah stood outside the courthouse, the weight of its stone walls pressing against her chest like judgment. She clutched Ethan's small hand, whispering, "We'll be okay." Ethan nodded silently, his wide eyes reflecting both fear and trust. Inside, the air smelled sterile, the shuffle of papers and footsteps echoing. Mark appeared down the hall, smirking as though victory were already his. Sarah's breath caught, her throat tightening, but she refused to look away. Lisa squeezed her shoulder, whispering, "Don't let him see your fear." Sarah lifted her chin, though her knees trembled beneath her coat. Ethan tugged her hand and whispered, "Mommy, I'm brave if you're brave." The words sank deep, giving her strength she didn't know she had. She whispered back, "Then we'll be brave together." Every step toward the courtroom felt like stepping into fire, but she walked on, determined not to burn alone. The hearing began with voices sharp as blades, lawyers trading words like weapons. Sarah sat at the table, fingers clenched, eyes fixed on the judge's gavel. Mark leaned back, feigning calm, but his smirk betrayed arrogance. His lawyer painted Sarah as unstable, their words dripping poison into the air. Sarah whispered to herself, "Don't break." Ethan sat outside with Lisa, waiting in a world too heavy for him to understand. When her turn came, Sarah's voice shook, but she said, "I've sacrificed everything to protect my son." The judge's eyes studied her closely, weighing truth against fear. Mark rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath, but Sarah didn't falter. Her heart thundered, each beat a reminder of the stakes. She thought, "This isn't just a fight for custody, it's survival." That night, Sarah collapsed onto her couch, exhaustion dripping from every bone. Ethan sat beside her, leaning his head on her arm. "Did we win?" he whispered. She closed her eyes, whispering back, "Not yet, but we're still standing." His small hand slipped into hers, grounding her in a way no verdict ever could. Lisa called, reminding her, "Tomorrow we gather more evidence. Don't lose hope." Sarah thanked her, though her voice felt hollow. The apartment walls pressed in, filled with echoes of Mark's words, his smirk haunting her. She pressed a kiss to Ethan's forehead, whispering, "I promise you'll be safe." His breathing steadied, slipping into sleep, while Sarah sat awake, staring into the shadows. Fear lingered, but so did resolve, a fragile flame refusing to die. The following day, Sarah returned to work, only to find whispers spreading faster than truth. A coworker leaned close, whispering, "He said you are unstable." Her chest tightened, shame crawling up her neck. Lisa had warned her this might happen, but the sting still cut deep. She straightened her shoulders, whispering to herself, "I won't let his lies define me." At lunch, she sat alone, her reflection in the glass showing tired eyes but unbroken spirit. She thought of Ethan's words, "I'm brave if you're brave," and forced herself to stand taller. The fight had spilled into every part of her life, threatening to swallow her whole, but she refused to let Mark's voice be louder than her truth. That evening, Sarah tucked Ethan into bed, his small arms wrapping around her neck. "Don't let him take me," he whispered, his voice trembling. Tears burned her eyes, but she whispered back, "I never will." She stroked his hair until his breathing steadied, then sat in the dark, whispering prayers into the silence. Fear gnawed at her edges, but love filled the cracks, steadying her. She thought of tomorrow, of standing again before the judge, of facing Mark's lies head-on. She whispered into the night, "You'll never break us." The words carried more than hope. They carried a vow carved from years of sacrifice. Her heart pounded with both terror and strength, two forces locked in battle, but for Ethan, she knew which one must win. The knock at Sarah's door came late, startling her from restless thoughts. She opened it cautiously, finding a woman she hadn't seen in years, her older sister Emily, eyes sharp yet heavy with regret. Emily said quietly, "I heard about Mark. You can't face this alone." Sarah's breath caught, anger and longing colliding inside her. "Why now? After all this time," she whispered. Emily's eyes glistened, her voice breaking. "Because I was a coward before. I won't be now." Sarah stared at her, torn between shutting the door and clinging to the fragile hope her sister offered. Ethan peeked from behind Sarah, asking softly, "Who is she?" Sarah whispered, "This is your aunt." Ethan blinked, curiosity sparking through his fear. The moment stretched heavy, old wounds pressing against new possibilities. Sarah thought, "If I let her in, will she heal us or break us further?" Emily stepped inside cautiously, scanning the apartment like she was walking through ghosts. Sarah crossed her arms, whispering, "You left when I needed you most." Emily's voice cracked, "I know, and I regret it every day." Ethan sat on the couch, watching quietly, sensing the tension but saying nothing. Sarah's anger boiled, yet beneath it a deep ache stirred. "I can't trust you," she whispered. Emily leaned forward, pleading, "Then let me prove I've changed." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by Ethan's small voice. "She looks like you, Mom." Sarah blinked, her heart aching at the innocence in his words. Emily smiled faintly, whispering, "Family doesn't disappear, even when we fail." Sarah turned away, tears burning her eyes, caught between pain and the possibility of reconciliation. Emily revealed documents she had kept hidden, proof of Mark's past debts and violent altercations. Sarah's eyes widened, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Emily lowered her gaze, saying, "Because I was afraid of him too." Sarah's hands trembled as she held the papers, realizing the strength they could add to her case. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "Does this mean he can't hurt us anymore?" Sarah hugged him close, whispering, "It means we're stronger now." Emily's face softened, though guilt lingered. Sarah whispered, "If you're lying, I'll never forgive you." Emily replied firmly, "I'm not. I won't run this time." For the first time in years, Sarah felt the crack of light in a wall she thought was unbreakable. The three sat together, the distance between them shrinking as hours passed. Emily shared stories Sarah had never heard, of watching from afar, of regretting every silence. Sarah listened, torn between anger and the fragile hope of sisterhood. Ethan dozed on Sarah's lap, his small breath soft against the silence. Emily whispered, "You've carried this alone too long." Sarah's voice cracked, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need this help." Emily reached across the table, her hand trembling as it brushed Sarah's. Sarah hesitated, then allowed the contact, the gesture fragile but real. For the first time in years, Sarah whispered, "Maybe you stayed away because you were broken too." Emily's eyes filled with tears, whispering, "But I'm here now." When dawn arrived, Sarah stood by the window, staring at pale light breaking through blinds. Emily sat nearby, sipping coffee, weary but present. Sarah whispered, "If I let you in, it changes everything." Emily replied, "It should. We fight together now." Ethan padded into the room, rubbing his eyes, his voice soft. "Does this mean we're a family again?" Sarah's throat tightened, whispering, "It means we're stronger than before." Emily smiled faintly, though regret still lingered in her tired eyes. For the first time, Sarah felt less alone, as though the burden on her shoulders had shifted. The scars of betrayal still burned, but alongside them bloomed something unexpected, the fragile possibility of healing. Sarah thought, "Maybe we can rise from this together." The courthouse loomed larger than life as Sarah arrived with Ethan and Emily. Sarah's heart pounded, each step heavy with dread. Ethan whispered, "Mom, are we going to win?" Sarah forced a steady voice, "We're going to fight with everything we have." Emily walked beside her, carrying the folder of evidence, whispering, "He can't twist the truth anymore." Inside, the air buzzed with murmurs, the echo of heels on marble floors unsettling. Mark stood across the hall, smug as ever, his lawyer at his side, whispering in his ear. Sarah's knees trembled, but she squared her shoulders, reminding herself she was not walking in alone anymore. Lisa appeared, giving Sarah a reassuring nod. Sarah whispered, "For Ethan, I will not back down." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt like a battlefield. The judge entered, gavels striking with authority. Mark's lawyer began with venom, accusing Sarah of instability. Sarah clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "Stay calm." Her lawyer, Mr. Collins, countered with calm precision, introducing Emily's documents. Gasps echoed as Mark's history of debts and violent incidents came to light. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his smirk faltering. Sarah kept her eyes on the judge, not giving Mark the satisfaction of her fear. Ethan sat outside with Lisa, unaware of the battle raging inside. Sarah thought, "This is the moment I prove my strength is bigger than his lies." The tension exploded as Sarah was called to the stand. She walked forward, legs heavy, but her gaze unwavering. Mark glared, his jaw clenched. Sworn in, Sarah gripped the railing, whispering under her breath, "For Ethan." She spoke of sacrifices, of nights spent alone working, of holding her son through storms. Tears threatened, but she kept steady. Mark's lawyer tried to cut her down, sneering, "You were unstable." Sarah replied, "I'm a mother who never stopped fighting for her child." Her words hung heavy, echoing louder than accusation. Emily and Lisa exchanged a glance, pride and sorrow in their eyes. Mark slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "She is lying." The judge's gavel struck, silencing him. Sarah thought. The truth is finally louder than his rage. The afternoon dragged as evidence mounted. Emily testified, voice trembling as she admitted her silence in the past. I failed her before, but I won't now, she said. The courtroom hushed as she revealed Mark's threats that had silenced her. Mark scoffed, muttering, lies, but sweat glistened on his brow. Sarah watched her sister, feeling both pain and gratitude, whispering, thank you. Emily met her gaze, whispering back, we fight together. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing as he reviewed the documents. The weight of the truth pressed hard against the lies, shifting the balance of the fight. Sarah thought, this is the day his mask breaks. As the day ended, the final confrontation cut through the courtroom. Mark rose, shouting, she poisoned my son against me. His words rang hollow, desperation seeping through. Sarah stood, her voice calm but steady. No, Mark, your actions did that. Silence fell, every word striking harder than his rage. The judge's gavel slammed, declaring the session adjourned. Sarah exhaled deeply, her body trembling with the release of 1,000 unspoken fears. Emily wrapped an arm around her shoulder, whispering, you did it. Lisa smiled faintly, relief etched across her face. Ethan ran to her arms outside, whispering, I knew you'd protect me. Sarah held him close, whispering, always. The storm had not yet passed, but she had faced it and remained standing. The courtroom was hushed as the judge returned with his decision. Sarah's breath caught, her hands trembling under the weight of the moment. The judge's voice echoed, steady and deliberate. Custody is granted to Sarah Williams. Tears blurred her vision as relief and exhaustion collided. Mark erupted in anger, shouting, this isn't over. The bailiff moved swiftly, silencing him as the judge's gavel struck. Sarah sat frozen, Ethan's future secured, but at a cost she could feel in every scar of her heart. Emily gripped her hand tightly, whispering, you won, Sarah. Lisa smiled through tears, mouthing, you did it. Sarah exhaled, whispering to herself, it was always for him. The weight did not vanish, but for the first time she felt air in her lungs again, free yet heavy with the journey it took to arrive here. Outside the courthouse, Sarah knelt to Ethan's level, her hands cupping his small face. Ethan asked softly, does this mean we're safe now? Her tears fell as she whispered, yes, Ethan, you're safe and you're mine. Emily stood close, her eyes soft with relief, while Lisa leaned nearby, her smile warm but weary. The world outside bustled, but for Sarah, it slowed into this single moment of victory. Ethan hugged her fiercely, whispering, I knew you'd never give up on me. Sarah kissed his forehead, whispering back, never. You're my everything. The air smelled of rain, the clouds parting with slivers of sunlight as though the sky itself acknowledged the battle's end. For the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to breathe without fear. Back at the apartment, Sarah unlocked the door with trembling hands, the space greeting her with a strange quiet. Ethan rushed inside, dropping his backpack with a smile she hadn't seen in months. It feels different, he said. Sarah whispered, because now it's ours. Emily helped carry groceries in, her voice soft. You can finally start over. Lisa joined them, placing coffee on the table, saying, it's time to rebuild. Sarah looked around, the cracked door still scarred from that night, but the air lighter. She whispered, we'll heal here. Ethan curled beside her on the couch, his laughter filling the room like sunlight. For the first time, the apartment felt less like a battlefield and more like a home. Later that evening, Sarah sat on the balcony, the city glowing below. Emily sat beside her, silent but present, while Lisa leaned against the railing. Sarah whispered, I thought I'd lost everything, but somehow I found more. Emily's eyes filled with regret and pride, whispering, you never stopped fighting. Lisa added softly, and now you can live, not just survive. Sarah exhaled, the cool night air soothing her, the stars flickering faintly above. She thought of Mark's rage, of the scars left behind, but chose not to linger there. She whispered, the past doesn't define us anymore. Inside, Ethan slept soundly, his breathing steady, a quiet reminder of victory. For the first time, Sarah believed in tomorrow. The final night closed in with a rare peace. Sarah stood in Ethan's room watching him sleep, his small chest rising steadily. She placed a hand on the doorframe, whispering, "We'll be okay." She sat on the edge of his bed, brushing his hair gently, whispering, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." A smile broke across her face, real and unmasked, as though years of pain released in one breath. Emily and Lisa watched quietly from the hall, their eyes soft, knowing Sarah had found her strength. The apartment, once filled with fear, now hummed with quiet hope. Sarah closed her eyes, sealing her vow in silence. Tomorrow would still bring challenges, but tonight, she had won the most important battle, the right to hold her son and believe in a future.